Hi everybody, Creative Kitty, Karen Burchill here. Welcome to an art journal tutorial. This one we're starting with a napkin. And here is the beautiful tulip napkin that I got from NinnysNapkins.com. So I'm starting and I'm giving a good coat of gesso to my 9x12 Canson mixed media journal. It is in a coil, but I've taken it off the coils so I could work flat. And I'm loving the freedom that gives me. So this napkin, if it looks familiar, I just finished a page with it, but I had extras cut out already, and I had an idea for another page. So you know what? I'm just going to go with inspiration and go with that. So I grabbed this magazine cutout, and I love the brightness of these tulips. In the preceding page, it went very vintage and very dark, and I wanted to keep this one lighter and brighter, you know, like spring flowers. So I'm doing a little bit more water cutting, and the great part with napkins is that you get 4 quadrants of perhaps the same image, which you can cut apart and put together any way you see fit. So out of the one napkin, I did the one page, and then I'm using the rest of that napkin for this one. So I put a background of the yellow green and light blue permanent. And while it's still wet, I'm removing paint through a stencil. I'm determined to get this technique down. So you put the wet paint on and then you remove it and it gives that white look. And this is kind of what I had in my mind. I wanted a very soft background. Didn't I wanted it to be kind of like sky, the background of a garden. I'm putting that on there. I'm taking pictures. Do I like it? How do I like it? Setting up the composition. And then I didn't like that. That was way too much blue, but I thought I'd put a little bit of blue, and I think it would have been okay if I had kept to it and just put the little bit of blue. But as you can see, I was so happy making the background that I just kept going, and I put a lot more blue than I want, and well, I fix that later. Testing out the image again on there where how far it goes. I'm thinking I don't want to have the stenciling where the napkin's going to go because again, the napkin will go translucent and I don't want to see that stenciling peeking through. I'm liking how that pattern on that stencil matches it on her dress, but it got a little dark, so I'm going to try putting white paint through stencil to knock this back. And just a note, there is a full recap of all the steps at the end of the video. People are really enjoying that feature, so I've continued it. I have these love or word stems, and they have these blossoms at the top. And I thought, oh, that would be good. This will really brighten and lighten the page, push back some of that darker blue, and maybe that'll give me the effect that I'm looking for. Plus, it's putting another flower motif into the background. I'm going back over some of them because I want it a little bit whiter, a little more opaque. And I'm just going to go across the whole part. And this is doing what I wanted it to do, which was push back that dark blue, brighten and lighten the page. And here I'm just flipping the stencil over to get a bit of a different variation. And I'm going right off the page with some of them. That's always a good thing to do. It just looks better than if they were all perfectly on the page. So after giving this a quick dry, with my heat tool, I'm back to figuring out or finalizing the composition. I want a little bit more variation, and here's where you can take whatever napkin that you have, or several napkins, and create your own composition. You can change it up. You can move them, reorganize them, however you see fit. So again, I start with the biggest one and I just keep editing my decision making. And I'm just doing a lot of additioning of where I want things. And I left a lot of this in, although I do speed it up, to show you that it's not a simple matter of 20 minutes. This video may be for 20 minutes, but in reality, this took over an hour of time. In fact, probably longer than that because there was some time that I didn't even capture on the video. I didn't like the starkness of going from pattern to no color, and I didn't know how that was going to look, so I just put a light color coating of the colors. Then I thought, gee, it'd be kind of cool to have some script underneath there, kind of peeking through just so subtly. So I grabbed my archival ink and I stamped it in. And I'm setting things up again. And I've grabbed some sentiments. The sentiments that you see are from my Through the Garden Gate sentiment pack, which I think is one of my favorite ones. But then I love flowers and art journaling with flowers, so I think it may get a lot of use because of that. I'm using my matte fluid medium and I'm just flipping it over and putting it down. And I'm putting a coat of matte medium on top. And then I'm piecing in whatever little additions that I'm making. So here, I like the one side going up a little higher. That looks good to me. And I'm thinking I am also going to want to have these flowers overlap her. So a little more editing. I'm cutting another part of that napkin and rearranging it. And I thought, oh, I like that. And there we go. So now that I've finally decided what's going to happen, I'm gluing the girl down again with the matte fluid medium, and then I'm putting the napkin down. I want this girl to look like she's, tiptoeing through the tulips, so to speak. Now, as you can see, the stenciling is showing through the flowers, so I have to fix that because I didn't, I don't like that look. So what I'm going to do is I'm using gesso and the colors of close to those tulips, and I'm very painterly globbing on paint. It's very abstract. It's not as precise and as beautiful as maybe the napkin was, but I'm blending colors. I'm putting the white gesso and I'm globbing. There's lots of texture here. And whenever I do this, I always take a deep breath beforehand because it's like, okay, let's hope this goes well. But it always looks good. And the less precise I am, almost the better it is. And so, I'm going from the different tulips on the different sides. Now this is fairly wet, so you do have to stop and let it dry and be careful not to get your hand in any of the wetness. You can even at this time, you can alter the colors of the flowers that are there. You can totally white them out and recolor it the way or the color that you want. So just use that napkin as the jump off point, as the starting voice, as the guide for the shapes. You can always go back and look at the napkin, or if you take a picture of the napkin, if you're using it all up, and look at where the highlights are, where the petals are, and you can kind of follow that. And it's a good way of just kind of painting without a lot of fear. And you're learning as you go. So I believe these are hyacinths, and I'm just dotting them with my stylus. And I'm using light blue permanent, white, and Prussian blue. And I go back afterwards and I kind of stab them up and down again with the stylus, and it gets more mottled and it looks great. And it's got some lovely texture. All the flowers on here, when they're done, end up with some wonderful, wonderful texture. But I don't make you watch me paint up all the flowers because that would make for a very long video. If you're a subscriber, please check your notifications and click on the bell and select to be notified of upcoming videos. I did learn that if you sign out of YouTube, you will not get notified. So you have to stay signed in order to get notifications. Now the background seemed so busy to me. It was just too dark. So I wanted to keep the pattern that was there from all that stenciling. So I'm using a wash of gesso. I've watered down my gesso and I'm just doing a wash. So I'm pushing it back, lightening the entire background because I want the girl and the tulips to be the focal point. And it was just seemed to me it was competing too much. While I loved it, and I might use that again for a different purpose, on with this spread, it was just too dark. It was fighting the focal image. So I'm really happy with lightening it. So now I'm going to do some shading. And today I'm using my Inktense pencil. Now Inktense is ink, not watercolor, and it's permanent when dry. So I'm using it here like the Stabilo All pencil or a watercolor pencil. I'm putting in lines and then activating it with the brush. The difference will be that the Inktense will be permanent, which is if this was on a canvas or on a wood panel and I went to varnish it, it wouldn't move. So it's a good alternative. I'll be totally honest, I'm not thrilled with my highlights or my shading on this picture. I just wasn't happy with how it ended up. But I think that has more to do with I just was kind of rushing the project. And that's just a reminder to you, just, you know what? Sometimes you need to stop, walk away, take a break, and come back. Because if you push through it, sometimes you end up with something that you don't like. Now, the Inktense pencils, while you can buy the kit, you can, in some art stores, buy them singly. So that would be something to look out for if you wanted to get like a black or a dark blue. I could also have shaded with some of the darker colors of the flowers. And if it got too dark here, you see me rubbing it with the baby wipe, getting that off. And now I'm just using the Inktense pencil to shade around the outside edge. I'm kind of smudging it, and then I'm going to reactivate it, and so I shade all my sides. Just another tool in your toolbox. So I covered up the girl and I'm splattering with Prussian blue, and then I splatter with the light or the yellow green as well. I just didn't want this to get on the girl's face. And there was a little bit on her hair, so I just grabbed the baby wipe and wiped it off. So I finalized my sentiment, and then there were those butterflies on that napkin, and I thought, oh, that'll be cute on here too. So I cut them out and I put them in there. I don't know about you, but the garden is definitely my happy place. I love flowers, and we're just, some of our spring flowers, the crocuses and the hellebores are coming up and they're blooming, and today we get snow. So it'll be a little bit while before the tulips come up. So taking off the tape, nice straight edge. I'm loving the page. I'm happy with my decision to push back that background with a wash of white gesso. Page bends, just kind of bend it back into shape. So after gessoing the page, I used the block and blend technique with the light blue permanent gesso and the light yellow green. I did a lot of stamping and some stenciling to create pattern in the background. Chose to use a napkin as a focal image and then a piece from a magazine to collage in, combining two different focal images. I used the painterly effect to paint over the flowers in the focal image, and I applied a wash of color to the whole page, that kind of whitewash. I shaded my focal images and the sentiment and splattered the whole page with colors that were from the page, adding a sentiment and edging the page. Thank you so much. If you want to see how I use this napkin in a very different way with different techniques, go check it out in my YouTube channel. Until next time, go get creative.